It's time for the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. Powerful and liberating business strategies you can start in 5 minutes or less. Now, here's your host, Dean Soto.
Hey, this is Dean Soto, founder of FreedomIn5Minutes.com and ProSulum.com. And we're here again with another Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast episode. Today's topic is this: how to create standard operating procedures for your business and why they are extremely important. That and more coming up. Oh my goodness, I'm out here with Luna. We're doing it again. Luna is having a blast on our land. I actually have a guy working our land with a big, huge excavator thing, and it's been pretty dang friggin' cool. But all that being said, I'm going to start heading back up. So if I'm huffing and puffing, it's because I'm walking uphill. Oh, man. So this podcast is going to be a little bit different than we normally do. Normally, I kind of have a little bit of a structure to what I'm going to say. However, in this case, I really want to get across a point and do two things. One, I want to tell you a story, a tale of two clients, one successful and one unsuccessful. And then I'm going to give you some actionable how-tos when it comes to creating standard operating procedures. Okay? So, all that being said, let's get into it. So, this is a tale of two clients, one a success and one a failure, and why knowing how to create standard operating procedures is extremely important and could mean the difference between you growing or you losing your business. So both of these clients started around the same time. One is... Whoops, I accidentally closed the door somehow of the chicken coop. The chickens want to go in. It's about time to go to bed. So these two clients started around the same time. And really cool guys. Really, both of them really nice guys. And the biggest differentiator... Well, actually, I should just say this. I'm just going to go right into it. So the first client is someone that I was actually nervous to meet when I first came to try and actually get them on board with having a Pro Sulum virtual systems architect. And you might hear some guineas and turkeys and stuff like that back here. So let me reopen this. Sorry. All right. Come on, guys. There you go. So, all right. So the first one's a part of this big commercial real estate company. Okay. And I was actually super nervous when I was going and selling them on the virtual systems architects. Because I'm thinking, like, one, they're in Southern California. 2, in one of the nicest part of California. And 3, they're a very well-established business. And so why would they need to outsource overseas via Pro Sulum? And why would they need my virtual systems architects who create standard operating procedures and actually do the tasks as well, right? Well, that's kind of the thought process that was going through my mind as I was heading over. So I was driving. I asked, I said, "Hey Siri, how do I get to so and so commercial real estate company?" And I start driving toward the place. It was a little bit hard to find, but it was literally man, the rent, if they don't own that place, the rent at that particular place, man, would be so much, because it's a very, very nice area of Southern California. But all that being said, I go and I finally find it, and I go and park, And I'm sitting there because it was about 15 minutes before our meeting, and I'm sitting there in the car just going, what am I doing? Like, I don't think I'm going to be able to convince them to be clients, and I don't know if they're going to find value in it. They're already in a huge, great company. But the cool thing is, I already knew. You hear those turkeys? The cool thing is, I already knew that that it worked. That my VSAs worked really, really well actually in the real estate industry. So we had a couple clients who are in the real estate field, and they crushed it, right? In fact, there was one who spent like it was more like 15 to 20 minutes on one process video that got turned into a thing that made them like 3 or 4 times the amount of revenue than they were making before. So pretty friggin' cool. So anyway, I go and I'm like, yeah, I still had that feeling like with the butterflies in my stomach and everything, that I was not going to be able to convince them, and they're not going to find any value at all. But we go, so anyway, it's about time to meet. I turn off the car, I get out, I head in, and I still remember I was like super overdressed too. Not overdressed, but I was dressed up in a really nice coat and dress pants, and these I actually had these $500 shoes that I found for $80 at Nordstrom's rack. And I'm like, well, I'm gonna look dapper at least, right? I'm gonna look good, and so I'm like, let's do it. I'm gonna make this happen. And so, anyway, all that being said, I go get into the office, and what happens, which I'm sure if you're in sales has happened before, is nobody's there. People are late. The only person who's there is kind of like an admin assistant. And that admin assistant says, "Oh yeah, you know what? No worries. They're going to be here soon. Why don't you head into the conference room? Head into the conference room and just wait for them. And you want some water and so on and so forth." So knowing now what I should have done then, I should have just been like, "No, I'll come back at another time. We can reschedule." But I didn't. I wanted to make the sale, right? See, even they thought it was funny. I wanted to make the sale, and I go and go sit down in the conference room, and eventually they show up. So they show up, and it was a couple of different people, and the main guy was this managing director guy. And he's like, everyone's throwing their business card at me. I don't have any business cards. And he's like, "Okay, so yeah, tell us about what you do and like, how can you help us?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't know." I honestly was like, "I don't know if I could help you guys. It seems like you guys have everything together." And he's like, "Yeah, I mean, we do, but we don't. We're kind of looking to cut costs and looking to get maybe an admin, someone who does administrative work here and yada yada." And I'm like, "Oh, okay. Well, here's what we do." And I start explaining how everything's based around standard operating procedures, what we do, right? And building out systems and process documentation. And then the VSA, what we call VSAs, virtual systems architects, will then do it, right? Not only do you just show them, it takes 5 minutes, they'll actually document it and then do what you just showed them. So I explain how all of that works. And the interesting thing was, he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, well, I don't think we need any of that. We're just looking for someone who could do admin work." And I'm like, "Okay, well," we kind of part ways, and I'm thinking like, they're probably not going to sign up. Not too long later, he emails and says, "Okay, yeah, let's do it. Let's sign up." And I'm like, "Okay, cool. That's awesome." Well, about a year later, what happened? Boom, COVID hit, right? COVID hits, and things are going out of control, right? Nobody knows what to do. Very, very odd time. What is the first thing that you think this guy does? He has a super cost-effective virtual systems architect. He has a staff that he probably overpays, what's the first thing you think he does? No, he doesn't cut his other staff, doesn't do anything like that, right? He basically emails and says, what's the term on our contract? How long are we stuck with you, basically? And I'm like, you're not. It's month to month. He's like, oh, okay. And I was surprised. He actually did not cancel at that particular point in time. He kept on going. But a few months later, in fact, it was last month, he emailed and said that he had to cancel. And the cool thing was that he was super nice about it. And he also cared a lot about the VSA that was working with him. And one of the things he said that was very telling of how his mind was one, he how did he say it? He said that times are tough for everyone right now. That's number one. And then two, he said, I hope so-and-so, the VSA, you can find a position for her. So those two things were very, very telling. So during that year or so that they were on board with Pro Sulum, there were numerous times when we tried to get them to think outside the box and not just do this administrative stuff. Because when you create standard operating procedures, you are essentially cloning. You're able to, if you do it the right way, if you make it step by step and you do it in a way that's super detailed, you can essentially engineer a clone of anyone in your organization. Just about anyone in your organization, to include the marketing director, to include the sales manager, to include the salesman, to include the financial type people, the accountants and so on and so forth, bookkeepers, payroll, to include virtually anyone in your business. The only thing that cannot be done and documented is business strategy and innovation. Those are the only two things really that cannot be documented and engineered into a standard operating procedure. So we kept on trying to get them to move away from the thoughts of they can only do admin type stuff. This person, which I'll explain to you, I'll tell you how she's doing right now in just a second. Sorry, I'll explain how she's doing in just a little bit. This person was stuck doing admin stuff. Okay. Because the business owner of this commercial real estate company was so fixated on the idea that all that could be done was admin type work. Okay. When you create standard operating procedures, you can engineer one person to do multiple things, be a part of multiple departments. In fact, everybody in your business can do virtually any job. Okay, that's the whole point. It's why they're so important, is because your business never stops when someone leaves. Okay. So those two things he mentioned. The first thing, that it's tough for everybody, and that he hopes that this person goes to somebody is able to be placed somewhere else, which is super sweet. That's super awesome that he thought that, right? Well, to the first part, that because of COVID-19, it's tough on everyone. No, it's not. The other person, George, who has been on the podcast has been on the podcast before. George runs a packaging company. And from the very first virtual systems architect, very first VSA that he got, he had them doing a variety of things. Everything from order processing to customer support to client account management to even some design things, all across the board. Okay, even they were even doing design. Okay, and these are not designers. These are people who were not trained to do any of this, because George took the time to create standard operating procedures and he engineered them. He engineered them to do all of the things that he was currently doing in his business. So during the COVID-19 pandemic, it was one of the best, for George, it was one of the highest revenue times that he had ever had, because by creating standard operating procedures, he was able to move his business into several different areas very quickly that were profitable. He was able to get into protective equipment or PPE gear, protective gear for COVID, so face masks and gloves and all these other things. He was able to set up online stores. He was able to reach out to suppliers. All of this was done because his guys had standard operating procedures, and they were doing virtually everything in the business right away. For him, COVID-19 was a huge blessing because he was able to move fast, able to change, able to adapt, and his entire staff was able to follow him because there were step-by-step documented procedures in his standard operating procedures, his SOPs. I'll just call them SOPs from now on. Huge difference. In fact, while the other guy had to had to let go of his quote-unquote administrative assistant that could have been much more, George hired more people because he had so much business that he hired out of pain of growth rather than out of just hiring to hire. He was actually making more money, and the only way that he could make more money was to hire more virtual systems architects, hire more VSAs, right? Create more processes and have them do the tasks. And so for him, the only problem he had was, I need more people so I can make more money. 2 different clients, 2 very different results. One had a very myopic view. One had a very tunnel vision view of what his staff could do. Because it wasn't just about his virtual systems architects or his VSAs. It was about his staff. The customer service person could only do customer service. The marketing person could only do marketing. The accounting person could only do accounting. And let's not change that because they're not going to be able to do anything else, right? Well, that is the downfall of a business. But that is the power of having SOPs. You can engineer your people to do virtually everything. Now, not everyone's going to be able to do absolutely everything because some people are just more talented than others. But for the most part, everyone's going to be on the same playing field. Everyone's going to have the same opportunities and to excel because everything is written down step by step in a very detailed process. Okay, so let's get into what I think are the 3 steps to creating great standard operating procedures. Then I'll give you the 4th bonus step that allows you to do it in 5, maybe 10 minutes a day. Okay, as opposed to a couple hours. Okay, so step number one. Step number one really is to know that every second that you spend on a standard operating procedure is making you money because it becomes an asset. Every standard operating procedure that you create is an asset. One of the main problems that I've seen over time is that it's very hard for business owners to spend the time it takes to actually create a standard operating procedure. You know, something that takes you 5 or 10 minutes to do, if you were going to write it out and actually take pictures and make it step-by-step, a step-by-step checklist type process, if you were going to write out a 5-minute procedure, it usually takes about an hour. So every 5 minutes you spend on something that you're doing during the day usually takes about an hour to document well, okay? So that being said, an hour is a lot of time, right? For a business owner, because that hour could be spent making sales. That hour could be spent helping customers. It could be spent doing a project and things like that. And so a lot of the times we see that writing a document is not really going to help our business. But what the cool thing is that when you see that you're creating an asset, when you see that it actually truly is helping your business to run by itself, and it allows your employees to be empowered to take on stuff that you would normally do, it becomes an asset. So that hour spent is something that hour spent is spent on something that you never have to do ever again, and something that potentially makes you money or saves you time in perpetuity, over and over, forever, right? And so the biggest thing is getting over the idea that it is a waste of time, that you're wasting your time, that it's too hard or it's taking too long to do standard operating procedures, okay? So number 2 is that that your SOPs have to be step-by-step and extremely detailed. Your SOPs should be... They need to have steps, for one, numerical steps. So step 1, when you have step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on, you are breaking the task down into very logical, very systematic steps that allow the person to see exactly what you're doing. And this includes steps such as click on a certain button, hover your mouse over a certain link, click the link. It could go to the URL bar, click into the URL bar, type in www.google.com or whatever it might be, okay? So step by step that even grandma can do it, okay? You imagine grandma is looking over your shoulder and you're explaining how to do the process. If grandma, who has no idea about anything in your business, is trying to learn what you're doing, the only way that she can learn, the only way that you can teach her how to do it, is by making it so simple and so detailed and so step by step that there's no how do you say it? Like make it to where no single thing that you're doing is not documented. Then it would be hard even for grandma not to follow the instructions. Okay, so they need to be extremely detailed. And also, when it comes to that, I always tell people to give the why. Why are you doing this particular task? Like, why are you doing this particular thing? Because the more whys that you give during these step-by-step processes, the more the person is going to understand your business. And later on, they're not going to need to have a step-by-step procedure in order to get something done. They'll actually already know. They'll know what you are trying to explain. They'll know why you're doing certain things in your business, and often they'll even improve the process for you over time. Okay. And the last thing that you need to do when creating a standard operating procedure is to have a very good folder structure for them. I break my folder structures out into specific areas, okay? I use Google Drive, and every single folder, so I'll create a standard operating procedures folder, and then in that standard operating procedures folder, I'll have a folder for general administrative tasks, I'll have a folder for accounting, for marketing, for managerial tasks, for affiliate marketing, for copywriting, for social media marketing, for consulting, for whatever kind of broad category they are in. It could be accounts payable, accounts receivable. I'll have a folder in there, and in those folders, I'll have SOPs done in Google Docs that everyone is able to edit, and it has a revision history. I'll have SOPs in there through using Google Docs that are the specific tasks that fall under that broad category. So, for example, like with accounts payable, you might have something such as like you might have a process document that talks about how to send invoices to your customers. So you might have a process document that says how to send invoices to your customers. The other one might be how to follow up with your customers after you send an invoice. Another one might be how to take customer credit cards so they can get on a recurring plan. Whatever it is for accounts receivable would be under that particular category. The same thing would be with social media marketing. You would have things like how to post on Instagram, how to do Instagram stories, how to do whatever social media thing, it would be under that business. But you have it under that folder, and that way it's very hard to confuse, and it's very hard. It's much easier, I should say, to find those processes for those specific things. And the more that you're able to be organized like that, the even better. And if you can number them as well, what happens is if you number them, you're able to easily reference them. So when you're giving a task, when you're saying, hey, you know what, I need my VSA to go and send an invoice to one of my customers. If you have it numbered, you can actually just send an email to your VSA and say, hey, I need you to do process number 5.01 for our new customer. Now they can go straight to 5.01 and know exactly what to do, right? So the more that you can be organized like that, the better. Okay, it all comes down to making it as easy as possible for everyone in your organization to see and to find and to utilize these standard operating procedures, and for them and for you to see them as an asset, okay? Now, I know they take a long time to do. They totally do. In fact, my very first standard operating procedure, you want to know how long it took? It took me about 10 hours to complete. But when it was done, I never had to do it again. It was amazing. It was something that was actually making me money as well. When it was done, it was absolutely heaven sent. Okay. But all that being said, there's a faster way to create standard operating procedures. In fact, you can do it in 5, 10, or 15 minutes at a time. You spend the 5 minutes, somebody else will actually do the standard operating procedures for you. And the way that's done is by getting a virtual systems architect from Pro Sulum. If you go to www.prosulum.com and you sign up for a discovery call, it might be a good fit, it might not be a good fit, but we have specially trained staff who will take your video, it'll take whatever you show them, they'll document it step by step for you and your entire organization, and then they will also do it at the same time. So you have somebody on staff, often below the minimum wage here in the United States, who will document everything, do everything, and essentially make your business. They'll make it so that your business runs on autopilot, which is absolutely insane. Several customers who do it. George is one of them that I mentioned before, but we have tons and tons of clients who spend 5 minutes a day, less than it takes to meditate. You just do 5 minutes a day on one task, and literally after a few days, you never have to do those things ever again, and your business runs by itself. In fact, one of the biggest problems we have is sometimes our clients don't know what to do with themselves after a while. Sometimes our clients are like, oh my gosh, I'm bored. I need to find something else to do. And so we help them to then figure out how to innovate and make new things and grow their business. So, but all that being said, go check out prosulum.com, www.prosulum.com, and get a virtual systems architect. So anyway, this is Dean Soto. So awesome to see you. And that is the end of this podcast. If you'd like to know more, go to FreedomIn5minutes.com and sign up there, or go to www.prosulum.com and go get yourself a virtual systems architect. But until next time, I will see you in the next Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast episode.
Thanks for listening to the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast. Now, head over to www.freedomin5minutes.com and register for our free masterclass and discover how to start systemizing and automating your entire business 5 minutes at a time. We'll see you next time on the Freedom in 5 Minutes podcast.